We're going to discuss teen mental health concerns, stressors, and healthy coping strategies. Without further ado, I am excited to bring a fantastic group of teens. Don't they look good? Hey, and our behavioral health expert. She's like, I'm not a teen. To discuss how daily stress impacts daily functioning. And Dr. Sims, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the most common mental health challenges among youth and the risk factors that lead to these challenges?
Absolutely. So, as I was just saying, when I work with adults, I primarily work with adults, but when they come in and they talk about their history with mental illness, with mental health challenges, it often starts in childhood. And they talk about experiencing depression, which is extremely common. So these experiences of feeling sad majority of the time where you don't feel like you can actually come out of the sadness. There's also anxiety, and particularly social anxiety is pretty high right now with youth. I think social media plays a really big part in that when we have like cyberbullying and all of these things that are happening anonymously on the internet. Social anxiety becomes a really big thing because it's difficult to actually be present in person and showing up fully as who you are. And so a lot of youth experience anxiety around that. Another really common thing is substance use. And this is something that I think that people really don't talk a lot about, but a lot of youth are using alcohol, substances, drugs as a way to cope. And because you all are still developing physiologically, the level of addiction that comes along with that is a lot higher. And so you're at a higher risk for substance use disorders because your body is still adjusting to just growing and developing. And then one of the really common things that I think we're going to talk a little bit more about later is suicidal ideation. Teens and youth are more likely to actually follow through with ending their lives than adults are. And that's a very alarming statistic that we have right now. And a lot of youth don't necessarily know that there is life on the other side, that there is something to be looking forward to. And so it's easier for them to fall into spaces of hopelessness and not wanting to be here anymore.
So I would love to hear from some of our young adults. Can you all tell us in your own words, what does mental health mean to you? And can you talk about some of the stressors that you experience in your daily life?
Yeah, I can. For me, mental health means like kind of just my whole world, really, because it's something that I wake up every day and I'm in my own head. So, and I've struggled a lot with like my mental health in the past, and it's something that's really important to me that I make sure that I keep it healthy in any ways I can, because it means a lot to me. And what was the other?
What are some of your daily stressors?
Right. Some of my daily stressors is school and like seeing like all these different tests and seeing I'm graduated now, but like I do different things on the side to like learn, and like sometimes that can be like very stressful because I'm trying to like get an A or get a high score, or try to get my like knowledge as high as I possibly can, and it's like and I tie my self-worth a lot to like my schoolwork and to like my achievements, and that's something that's a major stressor for me on a daily basis. And I'll pass it to Tony.
Okay, so for me, mental health means like being at a place of contentness. Some of my biggest stressors are biggest things that I deal with is trying to be perfect all the time. Trying to compare myself with other people and not realizing that it's degrading to myself, and it's not what's right for me. So basically for me, like I write a lot, and that really helps me to just get my thoughts out there and just to get my sanity and my mental health back to where it needs to be.
Again, my name is Kyron. To me, mental health is, I agree with what Sarai said, it's just kind of like my everyday. For me personally, it's kind of like a back and forth kind of struggle. I remember there was a point where like I was doing mental health content in a box, and I kind of had to step away because it was kind of like a little too close to home for me. And that was kind of like a way that I like kind of spoke up and gave myself a bit of self-care there. Something that stresses me out daily, honestly, like my household it's a bit disorganized in the ways that like it functions. So it isn't kind of like easy to just kind of like have a place to like go back to, like where your home is supposed to be like the reset place. It's a little kind of like the opposite for me. It's like I leave the house to reset and then I come back to like this kind of like massive like ever-changing chaos. Like there's never something that's like completely right or anything like that. And other than that, school, currently doing school like online from home is pretty hard, because you know, if the house isn't stable, like how is like finding time to properly study and like turn in your assignments and you're dealing with everything else. Yeah.
Yeah. And as you all are saying that, I'm thinking about some of my own stressors, and I would love to give you all the opportunity, if you want to just kind of release some of those, write it down. Like, think about what might be stressing you out right now. Think about what mental health means to you, and just write it down. Sometimes it helps to just talk about it and get it out so that you can acknowledge it, and feel validated in what might be bothering you right now. Tell me, how do you know when you are in a state of distress? How do you know when your mental health is maybe not in the best shape?
For me personally, when I'm not in the best state, everything just starts to fall apart, if that makes sense. Like I feel like my relationships with like my friends or like my family just like falling apart. Maybe my grades start to slip down. It's like everything that I really care about just starts to crumble. And for me, like, I usually, whenever that happens to me, like I just need to write. And writing is just where I can just get my sanity back, where I can become myself again. So when I write down my problems, I can like reorganize myself and find like, okay, this is like what I need to do. This is where I need to go from here.
Zariah, in what ways do you see yourself or your friends coping with stress, including those healthy and maybe unhealthy techniques?
For myself, when I cope with like stress on a daily basis, something I've recently started doing that I love is like making like these jingle-like songs that remind me to express my feelings. Like one of my favorite ones is goes like, and if you feel a negative feeling, put it in the book. And it's kind of like reminds me to write in my journal, because my first thought is like, I'm gonna keep it all in my head. I'm not going to express anything. But that, when I'm like super overwhelmed, it comes into my head as a jingle, and I'm like, yeah, put it in the book. I can get my journal and write about this. So that's one way that I cope positively. I see that a lot of my peers also cope like positively by making like affirmation walls, like the one that's actually over there. Like doing different like cool and crafty mental health exercises, like especially at Vox, like we have like different things that are led by like the teens there that they came up with, like how to make your own glitter stress balls, or how to make a courage jar, or an affirmation board, and just we have so many things that like I've seen teens and my peers come up with to like cope positively. It's usually in a crafty and creative way, because we're generally all very crafty and creative people. Negatively, I've seen this both with myself and my peers, but like with bottling our emotions and kind of internalizing a lot. I feel like we're all unlearning it and trying to learn how to express ourselves, because it's honestly really hard. But yeah, I've seen that like we keep things in because it'll like show that we're more resilient and that we have more of our stuff together, and it's not always that, and it's good to express yourself. But I've seen us cope and myself cope by just like bottling, and my first thought kind of goes to bottle. That's why I make the jingle songs to remind me to express how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I love that. I'm probably gonna be singing that jingle later on, just to be honest. I want you guys too to think about like what are some positive things that you do. Maybe on your paper you can write a little positive plus sign. Like what are some things that you do to cope with your stress? And then maybe some not so good things. So like for me, I said my not so good things is staying in the bed. Like if I'm stressed, I'm just like, oh, put my covers over my head. I'm not dealing with it. But then that's kind of ignoring the problem. But positive, I would say maybe like getting outside, exercising. That's something that I do to cope. So kind of acknowledge what you think you do and that you're good at, but also something that maybe you want to improve on that might not be helpful towards your mental health. Dr. Sims, the suicide rate is highest during the mid-teen years. What do you think influences this, and what are the signs and symptoms that a teen may be experiencing suicidal ideation?
So some of the things instant influence that we live in a culture that is very much so instant gratification. So we're used to the internet. I don't know if anybody in here outside of the adults know about dial-up, like AOL. We used to have to wait and hear the sound for the internet to come up, right? Like we had to wait a solid 10 minutes before we could go on a website. And y'all are used to picking up your phones and going to any website, and if it don't take 5 seconds to load, you on to the next thing, right? And so that mentality of things happen instantly, when you are in a space of emotional pain that's bottling up and keeping it on the inside and you can't come out of that quickly, it's a lot more difficult to see the hope and that there's something better in the future. The most common piece of suicidal ideation is hopelessness. That there's nothing to look forward to, that there's nothing in the future that you're excited about or that you can grasp a hold to. And so it's easier, the way that we think about it when we're having those suicidal thoughts is that it would just be easier to end it now. And so if we are able to have a future orientation, have a community and a support around us, so that's another risk factor, is that when we're isolating, when we're bottling things up, we don't have people who are also able to empathize with us and share with us and understand what we're going through. And as teens, we tend to keep those things inside. We don't want to talk about them, or we don't feel like we have the space to actually talk about them, and so that increases the risk as well.
Even just now, like starting the year, what do you think are some words that you can to give to people?
I would like to say, like, look at yourself in the mirror and just like try to appreciate yourself, because school is a lot, and just like try to replace every like critical or negative thought that's like, oh, you're not good enough, or you didn't do this well enough. Try to replace that with, I'm doing the best I can. I am enough as I am, because I feel like that was one of my hardest things as as a student, was I would constantly criticize and pull myself down. So like making sure that like every time you catch yourself in that cycle of like negative thoughts and like being like angry at yourself or very hard on yourself, just understand that like you're human. Kind of like how we're putting on the ground rules. It's like nobody's perfect. You're allowed to be a human being, and just also find time for your hobbies, because if you just like only do schoolwork, you're gonna get very overwhelmed. So like find time to have fun, even if it's just like, hey, I got 20 minutes between this time, I'm gonna go and like take a walk, or I'm gonna go play with my dogs. And that's something that I've been doing recently to kind of help with like a very packed schedule. So it comes down to just like love yourself and like try to like affirm yourself whenever you can, and understand that you're human. You don't have to be perfect. And I'm gonna pass it off to Tony.
Something that I did personally at the beginning of the school year is I took the time and I sat down and I wrote down like 10 things that I genuinely love about myself. And I think everybody should do that as well. So it's something that you can go back to whenever you're feeling like you're comparing yourself to someone else, or you're just feeling down, you're not feeling like great at all. If you go back to that list that you wrote, you're gonna realize like, hey, like this is who I am. This is who like I know I am. So I think that's very important. I think everybody should do that as well.
Something I would say, talk to your friends. Like even when it's hard, keep talking to your friends. And like if your friends like distant, try to keep in touch with them. And if you notice yourself kind of like drifting away from like your people, just like try to keep in touch with them. Try to keep like a base level. You don't have to like talk every single day about everything, but just try to stay connected, because it becomes really easy to just kind of like drift away from the people that you're connected to. And I feel like that kind of it aids in like the feeling of like hopelessness, like and feeling alone, and everything. And also Google Calendar for your like assignments or like big tests and things. For like stuff, like make sure you set reminders for stuff.
I would say you have so much more life ahead of you. Your life does not end at the end of every school year. You have a future that is bright. And there are no, similar to like this concept around age of we wish that everything wasn't gridlocked by age as a teenager, you also don't have ages that you have to accomplish things by. And so perfectionism, all of these things put pressure on you to do something by the time you're 16, by the time you're 21, by the time you're 25. Let those go and just trust that the process will happen and you have the opportunity to do all of these things in the future that you want to do.
Hashtag trust the process, am I right? Yes. Alrighty, so we're gonna transition to Q&A. If you have a question that you would like answered live, feel free to write it down, just hold it up and someone from the team will come grab it from you and one of our lovely panelists will be able to answer that question for you. Or if you feel like you'd like to, you can also ask out loud.
For me, personally, to get myself out of a hole, I haven't had to get myself out of many holes. I start off by one thing I know that is one of my best mindful practices is bike riding. I know that if I get on my bike, I'm going to feel so much better. And if I start doing that on a daily basis, I'm gonna start feeling a lot better and start eventually climbing out of the hole. Another thing is for me, I try to always be organized, and I know that usually when I'm in a hole, I become scattered. So then I'm like, okay, here's a to-do list for today. We got 3 things on there, not 10. Try to do at least 2 of the things on there. So I try to get really organized because I know, okay, emotionally I'm not doing that well, but I still need to get myself to go along. And I know if I give myself small tasks to do, even if it's very small tasks, hey, you gotta redo your hair or something. I was I accomplished something today. I feel good about it. So I just kind of give myself those mini accomplishments to kind of get my self-esteem up again when I'm in a hole.
Something that I do a lot is I just get my journal and I honestly just dump everything that I'm thinking about and I literally just write it out and I read it out loud. And I guess that kind of helps me just see what my problems are, see what I'm going through. And honestly, I kind of just press restart. I kind of just come up with a new morning routine. I come up with how I'm gonna be more organized, just everything that I'm not doing that great with. I kind of just restart everything. And that just really helps me get out of my hole.
For me, right now, in this current moment, I would just call up my therapist, but before I had one, I would just journal it out, and I just sit outside for a while, in the grass, just kind of grounded and everything.
One helpful thing is a 5-4-3-2-1 technique. So you tap into each of your senses with counting. So you have 5 things that you see, 4 things you hear, 3 things you can feel, 2 things you can taste, 1 thing you can smell.
I feel like that is one of those challenging things. I know that I've made a lot of progress when talking to my mom specifically about mental health and the things that bothered me. I mainly did that by writing her a letter. That really helped because there wasn't any room for me to get really overwhelmed and get lost in my own words and not articulate what I'm saying. So when I gave her the letter I wrote to her to kind of just explain what was going on, that really helped her be okay, I understand some more. But yeah, I feel like that is one of those challenging things that it might be the parent too, where it's it's kind of you need both ways to kind of make sure that everybody's getting that communication.
For me, it's really different for me, but my parents honestly don't believe in mental health. So I've had to find other outlets, and that's my friends or vlogs or just other people outside of my family. So yeah.
I'll say too, I'm an adult, but one thing that I learned as I got older, talking to my parents about mental health, is sometimes make the conversations casual. Unless you might be really experiencing a crisis, if you're over dinner, just say Man, I'm really overwhelmed. Can I just like talk to you about how I'm feeling? Make those conversations casual, and then you'll start to feel more comfortable about it, and then you can start having those deeper conversations. But it doesn't always have to be like, hey, can we sit down and talk? I really need to talk to you. You could have it in the car. You could have it, over a meal. You could have it at the nail shop. Hey, whatever is comfortable for you, just making those conversations feel more casual so that they feel more comfortable for the both of you.
I would also add too is take time to really understand what you're experiencing as well, because a lot of times, especially if you have parents who do not know anything about mental health, maybe don't believe in that, if you're coming at them hot and you're in the middle of like crisis mode, they're probably still not going to be able to hear you. And not that you shouldn't be able to do that, but if you want to start to build that ability to be able to go to them, know what you're trying to say. And not that you can't cry when you're talking to your parents, but use the feelings wheel. So everybody Google the feelings wheel. It will change your life. Get a feelings wheel, save it on your phone. But be able to identify what those feelings are that you're actually feeling, so you can go and have a conversation with them in that casual way. But if we go in hot, it's gonna put their guard up too, and it's not gonna be a productive conversation.
For our awesome panelists, weren't they